July 2002, over Germany, the middle of the night.
What is it?
A Russian plane is taking children on holiday to Spain, but the pilots can't believe what they see heading towards them.
Increase climb.
Climb!
It's among the most poignant air disasters of recent times. How could two planes collide over one of the most closely regulated areas in the world?
Bravo Tango Charlie.
Faulty technology or human error?
Oh!
June 2002, the city of Ufa in western Russia. Ufa is populated by both Christians and Muslims. This year, its most outstanding teenagers have been chosen to go on a 2-week vacation organized by UNESCO near Barcelona in Spain. They are among the most clever, athletic or artistic children of Ufa. Kirill Degtyaryov is a 14-year-old prodigy. He's been painting since he was 4 years old and has already had 2 public exhibitions. He's halfway through his new work.
He was very good at painting. He felt colors. He received good reviews. The trip sounded very exciting. That's why we agreed that Kirill should go to Spain. He just graduated from grade 9. He needed some rest, and it was a good opportunity for a summer holiday.
Alina Hananova is a 12-year-old who's won several gymnastics competitions.
We were very glad for her because indeed very smart and very talented children were flying there. All extraordinary children in terms of their personalities. She studied very well, and she got only excellent marks. I remember that she was pleased to go on the trip. She loved getting ready for it. She was so excited. We purchased some clothes and some vacation stuff. As she was born, I informed my husband, and he cried because he was happy to have a daughter.
The 46 children from Ufa, accompanied by a few teachers, leave on a train to Moscow. There, they're due to catch their flight to Barcelona. But in Moscow, things start to go wrong. The tourist agency accidentally takes the children to the wrong airport, so they miss their plane. They're terribly disappointed. While the agency tries to sort out the mess, the children go sightseeing in the Russian capital. It takes 2 days to charter another jet, but finally they're on their way to Barcelona. On July the 1st, 2002, the children from Ufa board their plane at a Moscow airport. The Kaloyevs are not part of the school group. They're going on a holiday to meet their father, who's an architect, and is finishing a project near Barcelona. No fewer than 5 Russians are flying this plane. The captain is Alexander Gross, who's been a pilot for over 30 years.
Alexander had a good theoretical knowledge. He was very smart.
Today, the first officer is Oleg Grigoriev. But actually, Grigoriev is the airline's chief pilot. On this trip, he'll be evaluating Captain Gross's flying.
If you did something wrong, some captains would criticize you very rudely. Others would be very formal and polite. But Oleg Grigoriev would express his disapproval in a gesture, like that, meaning, why on earth did you do that?
Captain Gross is in command, but Captain Grigoriev is his supervisor. If it comes to the crunch, who will really be in charge? Seated in the left rear is Murat Itkuyilov, normally the first officer, but who's not officially on duty because Grigoriev is in his seat. Nevertheless, since he'll soon be promoted to captain, his opinions are considered.
Мурат был профессионален как пилот, любил летать.
Murat was a very professional pilot. He loved to fly. Murat was interested in the new stuff in aviation and always kept up to date on the most progressive things brought in.
Also on the flight deck are an experienced navigator and a flight engineer. Just before 11 that evening, Bashkirian Airlines Flight 2937 leaves Moscow. The plane is a Tupolev 154. Like most modern aircraft, it carries collision avoidance equipment called TCAS, or Traffic Collision Avoidance System.
Descend, descend, descend.
TCAS works because all commercial aircraft carry a transponder, which sends a constant stream of radio signals identifying them and saying where they are. TCAS listens in and calculates whether any of the planes is on a collision course. If they are, it will tell the pilot what action to take to avoid collision.
Descend, descend.
If air traffic control should ever let them down, TCAS will be their last line of defense.
Clear of conflict.
Hundreds of miles away in Bergamo, Italy, a Boeing 757 is getting underway. It's flying for DHL, the international freight company, and is heading for their European base at Brussels in Belgium. The Russian Tupolev will cross its path over southern Germany. The Boeing has only 2 people aboard, Captain Paul Phillips, who's British, and First Officer Brant Campioni, who's Canadian, and due to fly the next leg of the journey. The DHL takes off at 6 minutes past 11 on what will be its last journey. Ten to 8 at the Skyguide Area Control Center in Zurich, Switzerland. The busy day shift has ended and the night shift is reporting for work. Peter Nielsen is an experienced controller. He's been doing this job for 8 years. The center regulates air traffic in southern Germany as well as northern Switzerland. Tonight, there are only 2 controllers on duty. But the traffic in their sector is light, and Nielsen's colleague decides to take a lengthy break, a common practice at Skyguide. Peter Nielsen is now responsible for all air traffic on 2 radar screens, which sit several feet apart. At 10 past 11, 2 technicians arrive. They inform Peter that Skyguide management has authorized them to carry out maintenance work on the main radar. While they do so, the screens will work much more slowly, and will give no visual 2-minute warning if planes are getting too close to each other.
Tie into 933, route traffic in Allgäu. Bavarian 350, descend flight level 270.
The engineers now tell Peter Nielsen they have to shut down the telephone system as well. They switch over to the standby phones. No one realizes it yet, but the seeds of disaster have been sown. The Russian plane, filled with schoolchildren, is now over central Germany and flying towards Switzerland. Captain Grigoriev gets final clearance from the last German control center before they cross south into Switzerland.
128.05, Bravo Tango Charlie, 2937. Goodbye.
The German controller hands over the Russian plane to Skyguide, where Peter Nielsen is at the helm. Meanwhile, the DHL plane is climbing north over the Alps and is now entering Swiss airspace.
Zurich, radar, good evening. Dilmun 611, I'm climbing flight level 260, direct Obesi.
Captain Paul Phillips of the DHL requests clearance to climb to a higher altitude. The thinner air there will mean less air resistance and save fuel.
Roger, climb flight level 320. Direct Tango Golf Oscar and requesting 360, thanks, it's available.
Tillman 611, climb flight level 360.
The DHL reaches flight level 360, or 36,000 feet, the same altitude as the Russian plane. And they're on a collision course, but they're many miles apart. So far, no danger. Now the assistant gives Peter Nielsen a new flight strip. An Airbus Aero Lloyd Flight 1135 is flying to the airport of Friedrichshafen nearby. It's going to increase Peter's workload dramatically over the next 5 minutes and have him switching from one screen to another. Peter tries to dial the airport control tower at Friedrichshafen to discuss handing over the Aero Lloyd flight to them, but the line is dead. He tries a second time. The phones aren't working. The Aero Lloyd pilot is trying to make contact with Peter. He has to leave the Russian pilots unattended. But the Russian pilot is also calling him on the other screen.
Aero Lloyd 1135, roger. Call you back. Station calling.
Say again, please.
Zurich, good evening. Bravo Tango Charlie, 2937.
Level 360.
Bravo Tango Charlie 2937, squawk 7520.
The Aero Lloyd is calling again.
Yeah, expect so. Call you back shortly.
Now another plane needs him. A Thai Airways flight heading north.
Thai into 933. Contact now on Munich 132.140. Goodbye.
140, Thai,
Air traffic controllers are used to handling tricky situations. But tonight, Peter's equipment isn't working properly, and he's controlling 2 screens at the same time. Normally, his radar would warn of any impending collision. What he doesn't know is that tonight, it's out of action.
Correct. What is your present heading?
Present heading is 265.
Roger. Right turn, heading 280, vector ILS 24.
Right heading 2804, to expect ILS 24, Aero Lloyd 1.
Peter wants to get this Aero Lloyd flight off his hands. He tries dialing the public number for the Friedrichshafen control tower for the 3rd time. Meanwhile, the Russian airliner and the DHL plane are still heading towards each other at a closing speed of over 800 miles per hour. Neither crew is aware that they're only 2.5 minutes apart. The DHL plane is now approaching the Swiss border with Germany. The Russian Tupolev is heading for exactly the same spot and at the same altitude. Finally, someone at another air traffic control center in Germany spots the danger.
Conflict.
He grabs the phone to warn Nielsen, but can't get through. international air traffic rules prevent him from talking to the pilots directly.
Look at that.
Now, for the first time, the Russian pilots can see the DHL plane on the screen of their TCAS anti-collision computer. But Peter Nielsen is still focused on getting the Aeroloid flight safely down.
Aeroloid 1135?
Aeroloid 1135, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I lost my connection to Friedrichshafen Airport. Could you please call them on your second set, 124.35. Tell them you're coming in ILS 24 with 20 miles now?
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, taking over.
On the DHL cargo plane, the crew is relaxed. They don't know they're on a collision course. Their TCAS hasn't sounded a warning yet.
Stuff I can get you?
The first officer goes to the washroom. On the Russian plane, the pilots are getting concerned. The other plane is getting closer and closer, but they're not exactly sure whether he's on the same altitude as them.
He's going below us.
Why below?
500. No, 100 meters.
Traffic.
Now fucking traffic.
Why?
Traffic.
TCAS, the collision avoidance computer, is warning the Russian pilots that the other plane is getting too close for comfort. At the same moment, the TCAS in the DHL cockpit detects the Russian plane.
Descend.
Peter Nielsen finally realizes what's happening.
Bravo Tango Charlie 2937, descend flight level 350.
Expedite. I have crossing traffic.
Descend.
Captain Gross disengages the autopilot and starts to descend.
Climb.
TCAS is telling them to climb. The controller is telling them to descend.
It says climb.
He is guiding us down.
Bravo
Descend
Tango
Charlie 2937, descend level 350, expedite descent.
Expedite descent level 350.
Bravo Tango Charlie 2937.
Peter Nielsen thinks he's averted a collision by telling the Russian plane to descend. But what he doesn't know is that the DHL pilots have received a TCAS instruction telling them to descend.
Increase! Dilmoon, 600. TCAS descent.
They're trying to tell Nielsen that they have a TCAS instruction to descend, but Peter can't hear them. If both planes obeyed TCAS, there'd be no problem. But the Russians, instead of climbing, have followed the controller's orders. Now both planes are diving towards each other.
He's going below us.
Fuck, what is it?
Here on the left!
Increase climb.
Climb, it says!
Climb! Descend! Fuck, descend hard! Climb!
The tail of the DHL clips the belly of the Tupolev, tearing it apart. The pilots soon lose consciousness. The DHL struggles on for another 2 minutes. It will crash 4 miles away.
Can we go over to Friedrichshafen?
Affirm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Peter is unaware of what just happened.
Bravo Tango Charlie 2937. Bravo Tango Charlie 2937. Bravo, tank. Go, Charlie.
This is the nightmare that every controller hopes will not happen to him. Two of his aircraft colliding, killing scores of people.
Oh!
Peter Nielsen leaves the control room for the last time, but his story is far from over. The wreckage of the two planes has fallen just outside the small city of Überlingen on the German-Swiss border. Wreckage is scattered over 130 square miles. It's the worst mid-air collision in German post-war history. Debris comes raining down around a school for handicapped children run by Bruno and Stella Wegmüller.
The sky was orange, red, flaming, and we saw these pieces falling down and detonations again and again, and we realized it couldn't have been a normal thunderstorm. It was something we had never heard and seen before.
It was incredible because there are many, many houses here, and there was nothing on this place. But around our school, we find the bodies, children.
We very soon also realized that we couldn't do anything, really. We couldn't save anyone, we couldn't help anyone. Today, actually, some people still suffer and see the pictures and have to learn to deal with these pictures. And for other people, it is like a bad dream.
The problem was that the bodies and debris were dispersed over a very, very wide area, approximately 40 square kilometers. A corridor 20 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide.
It was the largest police operation in the province of Baden-Württemberg, lasting a week and involving over 6,000 people searching for the bodies.
The people were all very sad. They were all in a state of extreme shock, and naturally the rescue team could feel that and empathized with their suffering.
The policeman is standing where the DHL crashed.
Here you see no more trees. The trees have completely burned down. We assume that the turbines of the Boeing separated first, approximately 700 to 800 meters high before this plane crashed. One landed 300 meters that way, and the other turbine was another 500 meters that way.
In this garden lay many of the bodies of the children of Ufa.
In this part died 28 children. In this field, there was a child. More over here, in this field, there was a
When they showed a close-up of an airplane, I saw an emblem of our Bashkir Airlines on the rear of the aircraft. I was in the kitchen. Everybody was still asleep. I nearly fainted. I leaned to the table. I didn't know what to do.
The Hananov family lost their only daughter. Irina Degtyaryeva lost her only child.
We hoped for some kind of a miracle, that he missed the plane. In a word, we didn't want to believe in this news. It was like thunder in a clear sky, and God forbid anyone gets news like this.
Vitaly Khaloyev, the Russian architect, was awaiting his family in Barcelona. He's one of the first to arrive in Überlingen. Although the relatives are not encouraged to participate in the search, Vitaly cannot help himself. Vitaly finds a broken pearl necklace. He recognizes it as his 4-year-old daughter's.
My angel.
Amazingly, amidst all the carnage, Vitaly finds his daughter's body intact.
She did not suffer at all.
The mutilated bodies of his wife and son won't be found until later. Over 6 days of searching, the rescue workers gather bodies and body parts scattered all over the southern German countryside.
By Thursday of that week, 2 days later, the relatives started arriving. They could not all see the bodies we'd found because most of the bodies were badly charred or mutilated. We didn't permit the relatives to view the bodies in that condition.
In Ufa, in western Russia, both Christian and Muslim communities are devastated by the loss of their children. In the cemetery, where 53 of the people in the Tupolev are buried, there are 2 double rows of gravestones, with the Christian Orthodox on one side and the Muslims on the other. It's eerily reminiscent of the seating arrangement on the plane. The monument evokes a flight of paper planes frozen in flight. This is Kirill's grave, the young talented artist. And this is Alina's, the 12-year-old gymnast. Vitaly Khaloyev, who lost his entire family, has designed and built a huge monument in their memory. Day and night, he lingers at the cemetery, inconsolable. At Skyguide in Zurich, after the collision, work has all but come to a standstill.
People were in a state of shock. They were shocked, they were helpless, there was a lot of sadness, people crying. And we were criticized for being too technocratic after the accident. I have to accept that. One of the biggest tasks was to maintain operations, because there were planes coming in, going out after this tragedy, and that was a very, very difficult situation for everybody.
For the next 3 weeks at the Zurich Air Traffic Control Center, capacity is reduced for lack of available controllers. Peter Nielsen never again worked on an air traffic workstation.
If you go through something like that, you're not able to come back. It's too deep in, and it's too big.
From an emotional point of view, of course, it was shattering. It was, for me, really, really terrible. Terrible in the sense that it happened to one of my colleagues, it happened to our profession, but it also happened to families who lost their children.
The hunt begins for a scapegoat. If two planes collide in empty skies, someone must be to blame. At first, some suspect the Russians.
The pilot of the Russian plane is said to have ignored repeated instructions from air traffic controllers.
And while the repeatedly, they contacted the Russian pilot and asked him to change altitude because he was flying at a level where he should not have been. Now, the Russian pilot never responded to those warnings from air traffic control.
The Russian pilots, particularly in Soviet times and also now, but to a lesser extent, were extremely well trained. I have no concerns about the training of pilots. They've been trained for almost every operational possibility that could happen.
Why did the TCAS device meant to avoid collisions, in this case maybe help cause one? And why didn't the Russian plane descend when first ordered? A language problem? Controller commands are always in English.
I knew everybody from that crew. Everybody knew English enough to speak with controller.
So who is to blame? The media spotlight now falls on controller Peter Nielsen. He was the man who'd guided the two planes towards each other. They were under his control. He must have caused them to collide.
I was as shocked as I could have been with any other name or any other colleague. I was just very sorry for him. The media coverage about the incident very often makes you angry because these statements are taken out of context. You really get the impression they just want to fill the newspaper, they write whatever they get. They go after colleagues, they give them a call at home, they follow you wherever you are.
You don't deserve to be the boogeyman for everybody. And that's something which really is still very difficult to accept, that suddenly we are some sort having to take the blame because the others are dead or the others are hiding behind politics, rules and things like this.
We started to leave this building by the underground exit, which leads through another building, just not to see anybody. They were asking people on the street in Kloten, people who were not involved at all, just to broadcast something in the evening. And that makes you angry, and you cannot resist it.
And what more do we know about this Swiss controller at the center of the investigation?
He was chased by the media. He was accused of being a murderer.
He's the man, obviously, everyone wants to talk to, but at the moment, the Swiss say he's in no position to talk. And we heard today that the Swiss authorities have opened an investigation to see whether there's enough evidence for charges of manslaughter.
The accusation was manslaughter by negligence in 71 cases. And the speciality is that in this case, the investigating judge has been working on a investigation on his own, independently from what the Aviation Investigation Board of Germany did.
Meanwhile, that investigation is underway, headed by Germany's air crash detectives, the BFU. By the fifth day, they've read all the black boxes.
So this is a typical voice recorder, which was built into the Tupolev 154. It shows two reels. The recording time of this recorder is 30 minutes. And this is rather solid, but the original voice recorder of the Tupolev was heavily damaged. So we had to remove the tape and replay it on such a specialized tape recorder.
This is the hangar where wreckage of the planes was examined.
This one here is the lower surface of the right wing of the Tupolev, and that remaining stub here went below the Tupolev and caused these scratches. That top part of the vertical tail remained at the accident site on the main wreckage of the Boeing.
But could this accident have been avoided? TCAS normally has a safeguard mechanism called a reversal. If an alert is issued and one aircraft crew ignores an instruction, TCAS orders a reversal. If the TCAS on aircraft A senses that aircraft B is still on a collision course, it will tell it to go in another direction. But it didn't. Why?
One of the major requirements for that is that both planes have to be at least 100 feet apart in altitude. But this requirement was not met at the time. That's why no reversal was given.
When the DHL's TCAS saw that the Tupolev wasn't climbing, it could only tell its pilots to descend even faster.
Increase descent.
If the reversal had been possible, the children of Ufa might have lived. July 2003. Many parents returned to Überlingen in Germany for the first anniversary. The Germans built a memorial on the site of the tragedy. It's made up of a series of giant silver pearls on a broken necklace. The head of Skyguide is among the crowd.
Can you tell us, what are the mistakes you made?
I don't think this is the time to talk about it. I'm sure you'll understand.
Have you apologized?
Okay. Thank you.
Among the parents is Vitaly Kaloyev. He asks the head of Skyguide which controller was responsible for the accident, but receives no answer.
Yes, in fact, the man asked if it is possible to meet the controller, to meet Peter, and the answer was it is not possible.
The request passes almost unnoticed, but Vitaly Kaloyev is not satisfied.
Descend. Crossing.
Meanwhile, as the investigators work, they discover a fog of confusion surrounding TCAS. When it was introduced 20 years previously, there'd been a fatal omission.
Descend flight level 350. Expedite. I have
No one
crossing
said
traffic.
what should happen if there was a conflict between what TCAS was saying and what the controller was saying.
It says climb.
There's no hard and fast rule to guide the pilots.
He is guiding us down.
Increase descent.
Whilst pilots in the West have always been taught to obey TCAS,
600, TCAS, descent.
in the rest of the world, it's anyone's guess.
We're not accustomed to not trusting controllers. In civil aviation, there were lots of situations when pilots didn't follow instructions of the controller, and that led to plane crashes or other accidents.
The mentality of Russians is still very much in the lines of the old Soviet ways, and they're much more inclined to follow instructions than to do what they think may be appropriate. They always reckon that the other guy knows better.
The potential for a terrible accident was there, and a year and a half before the Überlingen tragedy, it nearly happened. Over Japan, 2 jumbo jets with 677 people aboard came so close that they filled each other's windscreens. The violent avoidance maneuver caused 100 people to be injured, some of them seriously. This was seconds away from being the worst plane crash in aviation history. Once again, a pilot had listened to the controller instead of his TCAS.
Descend.
It should have served as a warning to everyone. Yet from ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, there was only silence. ICAO is responsible for drawing up the rules of commercial aviation. German investigators say that their vagueness about how to use TCAS was one of the reasons for the Überlingen disaster.
I think this is the first time that I remember any major accident investigation, the one done by the BFU, fingering any of the aviation authorities in any serious way. And this is a serious way. So I think this is quite unique.
If ICAO had carried out a detailed investigation of the incident in Japan and made recommendations that led to changes in procedures, this probably would not have happened.
ICAO did not feel it necessary to get involved in this, and they left it entirely up to the Japanese authorities. Had it been a collision, maybe they would have got involved.
After this near miss, the Japanese government immediately asked for their guidance. But unfortunately, ICAO only acted on the request 18 months later, after the Überlingen disaster.
Perhaps the ICAO procedures and standards, but in particular operating procedures for airborne collision avoidance, were somewhat ambiguous or open to interpretation.
The Japanese incident was not the only warning ICAO received. In the 2 years leading up to the Überlingen collision, 4 other near misses happened in Europe alone because one set of pilots obeyed air traffic control instead of their TCAS.
If I have to summarize the advice that we gave the world, if a warning comes from ACAS, pilots should immediately follow it at all times. With the benefit of hindsight, you always ask yourself, could we have done more? And an accident is a wake-up call for everybody.
All of these regrets are of little comfort now to the grieving parents of Ufa.
Everything that was good is in the past and was connected with my child. All the hopes, dreams were connected with him, with his future. And now, nothing left. At least I've got nothing left. So the right way to put it is, my life didn't change. It stopped. Our pain doesn't go away, you know? It's getting stronger every year. It's getting harder to live. At first, we had a hope that she'd come back, that time would pass and things would fall into right places. And now the hope is gone. And the worst thing is that the kids were flying happy. Healthy kids were going on a vacation. And some grown-up people made a mistake, made a fatal mistake. And the kids were gone.
She was loved. She was very kind, gentle. She was the beloved daughter. Beloved daughter.
This is Kirill's room. Everything in this room is like it was when he was alive. Nothing's changed. After he was killed, there were also 2 exhibitions. One exhibition took place here, in Ufa, while the other one was in Germany, in Überlingen. And that's Kirill's last painting. He was really glad. He planned that he'd finish it when he'd get back.
Vitaly Khaloyev, the Russian architect, has lost his entire family, everything. He himself has gone to pieces. He's become obsessed with finding out who is responsible for the collision. Khaloyev decides to travel to Zurich to play out the last tragic chapter in the Überlingen story. On February the 24th, 2004, a stranger calls at the house of the controller, Peter Nielsen.
Yeah. Get out of here. Just go away.
It was just the saddest thing you can imagine. I knew his family. I knew how much he loved his kids and his wife, and
The presumed perpetrator is apparently 48 years old and of Eastern origin. He is likely the father of one of the families that was killed at the crash. He likely lost his wife and both their children.
They found Vitaly Kaloyev nearby in a hotel. Suspected but not yet charged with the murder, he's presently in a psychiatric clinic while they decide whether he's fit to stand trial.
Did he have the capacity to discern? Was it an impulse, or did he have the capacity to commit a crime?
Certain traces and police evidence were found which seemed to indicate that he could be the murderer.
We are working on this theory after the accused himself conceded that he could be the murderer.
We didn't want him to be killed. We didn't want to have more victims related to that catastrophe because of our children.
The killing of the flight controller was a very, very sad event. And the saddest thing of all was that he was not actually responsible for the accident. The system responsible for the accident was the poor Skyguide management and quality control of their system.
The investigators had worked out exactly what went wrong that night at Skyguide and how an unfortunate series of events had made disaster almost inevitable. First, Peter's colleague goes for a break, leaving him alone to watch two radar screens several feet apart.
It was a standard practice at the ATC company that at night, one air traffic controller was responsible for controlling the entire airspace of ATC Zurich.
Then, following management instructions, the maintenance men start to switch things off. Peter's radar screen is working more slowly and will not warn him if two planes are about to collide. He doesn't know that.
During the maintenance work, the radar system had to be run in fallback mode. In fallback mode, the controller has no STCA available.
STCA is short-term collision alert, a warning on the radar screen that planes are in imminent danger of collision.
He did not know that the STCA system would not be available.
Then by chance, an unexpected aircraft, the Aeroloid tourist plane, arrives at the critical moment and needs a lot of attention. It completely distracts Peter. He tries to get outside help, but the main phone system has been accidentally disconnected by the maintenance crew, and the backup phone isn't working. The controller has been robbed of all the technical support he needs.
The phone link with Friedrichshafen was down. At this time, there were various radio transmissions, and the controller had to answer them on the different frequencies.
Finally, when both planes are descending, the DHL pilots cannot tell him what's happening because the radio frequency is busy.
600, TCAS, descent!
The earliest they could do that was 23 seconds later, because until then, the frequency was blocked by the ATC Zurich transmission to the Tupolev crew.
May 2004. It had taken the German BFU investigators 22 months to publish their final report. They found that the disaster had two major causes. Firstly, Peter Nielsen was too late in noticing the danger of a collision. Secondly, the Russian crew was wrong to obey him when he told them to descend, rather than their own TCAS equipment telling them to climb. But other pilots understand their dilemma.
The TCAS commands are spoken in such a dispassionate voice. Descend, increase descent, such a matter-of-fact type of voice. And then there's the voice of the air traffic controller's urgent command. Descend immediately, leave this altitude immediately, go to another altitude at once. So, whichever voice sounded more urgent was the one the crew obeyed.
Finally, the report severely criticized Skyguide for leaving a lone controller on duty that night.
We have learned our lesson, and we don't have single-manned operations or only one controller in front of a monitor. anymore.
This might happen again. Another badly organized air control service or a crew might make a mistake.
You're guilty or not guilty. That's not the meaning of a final report. The meaning of a final report is facts. What has happened? Why did it happen? What are the lessons to be learned? Safety requirements.
Why didn't they provide safety during that flight, when my child was on board? They must take the responsibility for not providing security for that flight.
Mistakes were made by us also, and we regret them deeply. We acknowledge our responsibility as set out in the BFU report, and we ask the families of the victims for forgiveness.
At Skyguide in Zurich, a rose now sits in a vase in memory of Peter Nielsen and the tragedy of Überlingen.
Buenas noches, senor. American 965 leaving 23...
In 1995, only days before Christmas, an American Airlines Boeing 757 is on its final approach to Cali, Colombia.
Cali approach, American 965.
The pilots are calm and relaxed. They don't know they've made a terrible mistake.
965, 9,000 feet.
They've strayed more than 10 miles off course and no longer have a clue where they are.
Oh, shit! Hold up, baby.
In complete darkness, the jet carrying 163 passengers and crew is heading into mortal danger.
I think we knew that something imminent was around the corner.
Up, baby! More! Up!
Flight 965 crashed into a 9,000-foot mountain. The crash reverberated throughout the aviation industry. How could one of the most technologically advanced aircraft in the world, equipped with a state-of-the-art navigational system and flown by some of the most skilled pilots, crash into the side of a mountain? On December the 20th, 1995, American Airlines Flight 965 is preparing to depart Miami International Airport.
Make our slot, but, well...
Its destination is Cali, Colombia. Flight 965 is scheduled to leave at 4:40 p.m., but has already been delayed for 30 minutes at the gate to allow for connecting passengers.
Surely gonna call us any second now.
The Doosan's only just made it.
In Miami, they tell us that we have to rush because the plane gonna leave to Cali very soon. Definitely, we were very happy because we know we're gonna fly that night.
So you made it?
Just in time.
Just in time.
You won't believe it. Go from New Jersey to Miami, we almost missed the flight.
Mercedes Ramirez, along with her mother and father, managed to get on the flight at the last minute.
We were on standby, so we weren't sure if our names were going to be called off to actually get on that flight. We heard our names and we were excited because, like, yes, we got on the flight.
But it's very old American.
Flight 965 finally leaves the gate at 5:14 p.m., 34 minutes late. But the problems aren't over yet. As they taxi towards the runway, the tower informs them of yet another delay.
American 965, stand by.
Heavy seasonal traffic clogs the runways, and they're forced to wait another hour and 20 minutes on the tarmac.
Ready, that's all there is to it. Wait, and...
American 965.
Finally, 2 hours late, Flight 965 is cleared for takeoff.
27 right. Fly the runway heading. clear for takeoff.
Merry Christmas. Cleared for takeoff. 27 right. American 965. You do a great job. Good night.
Captain Nicholas Tafuri, aged 57, is in charge of Flight 965. He's one of American Airlines' premier pilots, with more than 13,000 hours of flying experience, over 2,000 of them in the 757. He'd flown to Cali only 6 days earlier.
200, the heading. Climb to 16.
That's 16 American 965.
At the controls is First Officer Donnie R. Williams, age 39. Although he's been flying for American for 9 years, Flight 965 is his first trip to Cali. It's the holiday season, and the plane is filled with passengers starting their Christmas celebrations.
Everybody on that plane was either going back home for the Christmas holidays to visit their families, so I think everybody was just happy and excited to go back.
The day of the flight, December the 20th, is a very special day for passenger Mercedes Ramirez. Mercedes is a university student from Missouri. It's her 21st birthday, and this trip is a gift from her parents.
Usually we spent Christmas in Kansas City at home, but they wanted to do something special, and we had never spent the holidays with our family in Colombia, so it was a big deal for us. Since we flew standby, I couldn't sit with both my mom and my dad all in one row, so my mother and I were seated next to each other. I was by the window, she was in the middle, and then there was a passenger who was about my age who was in the aisle seat, and then my father was in another row behind us. And so nothing out of the ordinary at all, just a normal flight.
19-year-old Mauricio Reyes is sitting beside Mercedes' mother. Reyes is a student at the University of Michigan. Gonzalo Dusan and his wife Nancy and their 2 children, Michelle and Gonzalo Jr., are seated nearby.
We were very excited because the first time, we're going with my family to pass, Christmas over there in Cali. We wanted to see our families, members, brothers, sisters, to see our city again.
Two hours and 45 minutes into the flight, the plane is cruising at an altitude of 37,000 feet and on a pre-programmed flight path heading towards Cali's airport.
36 miles.
They're flying a Boeing 757, a state-of-the-art airplane equipped with highly sophisticated computer systems. When programmed with the appropriate data, the onboard computer, known as the Flight Management System, can control the aircraft from takeoff to landing. It can be a pilot's best friend, or in the case of Flight 965, their worst nightmare. An awkward moment an hour before their scheduled arrival in Cali makes Mercedes Ramirez change seats.
My mother had been talking to the college student who was next to her, and I think she was trying to kind of set me up with him because she kept on saying, oh, well, my daughter's in college, and my daughter's this, and my daughter's that. So I was very embarrassed. So I got up from my seat and moved to the row behind us, and I sat with my father.
The seemingly trivial decision will prove to be her lifesaver. It's a clear, moonless night with visibility more than 6 miles.
And that's just how it works. That's our scenario.
But Captain Tafuri is now getting concerned about their arrival time in Cali.
Debrief, 1 hour sign in, and you can't move that up at all because it's an FAA thing.
FAA regulations require a minimum number of hours on the ground before the cabin crew can fly again. The plane and its crew are scheduled to leave Colombia the following morning, but the unexpected delays in Miami means the plane may be late into Cali and not able to leave on time tomorrow.
When you want descent, let me know a few minutes early in case there's a language problem, okay?
Sure.
Any further delays will jeopardize their return flight the next day.
Well, let's see, we got 136 miles to the VOR and 32,000 feet to lose and slow down to boot, so might as well get started.
If they land within the next 25 minutes, they'll beat the deadline.
All right, sir. And if you'd keep the speed up on the descent, it'd help us too, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Gonzalito, let your sister sit beside the window.
Gonzalo de San's children quarrel over the window seat, not knowing that the consequences will be dire.
And I remember I told them before Cali, when the plane started to lose altitude, so we're going to see the valley, the city, very nice with a lot of lights on it, because usually by December, by Christmas time, they decorate, you know, the mountains with different colors, lights, and everything. Then they start to fight for the window side.
And I was fighting with my brother, Gonzalito. We were fighting for the window.
Okay, Gonzalito, let your sister have a chance by the window.
And I'm like, oh, I wanna see the lights, I wanna see the airport. And he got mad.
Okay, Michelle, you go sit by the window. Go sit with your cousin. Good boy, Gonzalito. Okay, Michelle, take a look at the lights. Let's come sit here. Come sit beside me. Come sit here. We're almost there. Michelle, can you see the lights outside the window?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
We have begun our descent for landing at Cali. It's a lovely evening.
As we'd expected, we'll pass a shower or two on the way in.
This lovely evening is about to end. In 30 seconds, the pilots will make the first of a series of mistakes, which will result in the death of nearly everyone on board. American Airlines Flight 965 is on its final descent, roughly 63 miles from Cali. Cali's Aragon Airport is situated at the end of a long valley. On both sides of the valley are towering mountain ranges that stretch to almost 14,000 feet. It's a formidable sight.
One of these nuts done?
No, thank you.
You want your water? You want to wait until we get on the ground about your water?
Oh, I'll wait for the ground.
To guide the plane on its proper pre-programmed flight path, the aircraft must pass over a series of waypoints. These are generally radio beacons at fixed positions along the route. The plane's computer picks up the signal from these beacons, one after the other, and guides it safely to the destination. Flight 965 is now approaching the waypoint called Tulua. Tulua is a radio beacon at the head of the valley which leads to Cali. After passing Tulua, they should fly down the valley and pass over the final waypoint called Rosso. Then they fly past the airport, turn right, and land from the south.
She did really well.
È molto interessante. È molto interessante, sì.
Cali approach, American 965.
American 965, good evening. Go ahead.
Buenas noches, senor. American 965.
Cali Air Traffic Controller Nelson Rivera will oversee the final approach of Flight 965. But he has a problem. Insurgents opposed to the Colombian government have blown up the radar installation. Rivera has no way of knowing where planes are until they radio their position.
The distance DME from Cali?
Without radar, the air traffic controller must rely on the flight crew to provide the aircraft's distance to the runway.
The DME is 6'3".
The DME is the distance measuring equipment in the Boeing cockpit.
Roger. American 965 is clear to Cali. Descend and maintain 5,000 feet. Altimeter 3002. Report Tuluá.
Okay, understood. Cleared direct to Cali, VOR, report Tuluá.
Affirmative.
It's a misunderstanding. Captain Tafuri thinks he's being told to fly direct to Cali and forget all about Tuluá. But the controller needs him to report when he passes Tuluá so that he knows where the plane is.
To me, the word directly means that he was authorized to go directly to Cali, that there was no delay. Therefore, he had to inform us of his position in Tuluá because we don't have radar. I needed him to inform me of that exact location.
Tafuri punches direct to Cali in his computer. Since the plane no longer has to pass over them, all the waypoints between his present position and Cali will now be erased, including Tuluá, the one he's now approaching.
Put direct Cali for you in there.
Okay, thank you.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing. Thank you.
And I remember they gave us the order to put the back of the seat straight. I remember that. And everybody was, so happy because we were very close to the city.
He 11 minutes before their estimated time of arrival.
Go ahead, please.
Sir, the wind is calm.
Air traffic control asks the flight crew if they'd like to land on runway 19.
You want to shoot the 19 straight in?
Instead of their planned approach to runway 01.
Yeah, we'll have to scramble to get down. We can do it.
Yes, sir. We'll
need a lower altitude right away, though.
Roger. The American 965 is cleared to VOR DME.
Okay.
The pilots are pleased. Runway 19 is a straight-in approach from the north. They won't have to lose precious time by circling the airport. But there isn't much time. They need to start getting the plane down quickly. Williams deploys the speed brakes. The brakes are flaps on the top of the wings. When they're raised, they reduce lift and increase the plane's rate of descent.
Approach runway 19. Roto number 1 arrival. Report.
This split-second decision to land on runway 19 sets off a chain of events that will end in disaster.
Arrival will report VOR. Thank you, sir.
Report Tuluá, VOR.
Report Tuluá.
I gotta give you a Tuluá first of all. You want to go right to Cal or to Tuluá?
I thought he said the Rosso 1 arrival.
Yeah, he did. We got time to pull that out.
Events begin to unravel very quickly in the cockpit. The pilots have to locate the new charts for the approach to 19, enter the new route into the computer, and still fly the plane.
And Tuluá 1 Rosso. Yeah, there it is. See, that comes off Tuluá.
They're getting totally confused. The controller keeps asking them to report when they've passed Tuluá. But having erased it from their computer, they have no idea where it is. Captain Tafuri asks the tower if they can forget Tuluá and fly directly to Rosso, their last waypoint before the runway.
Can American Airlines 965 go direct to Rosso?
And then do the Rosso arrival, sir.
Affirmative. Take the Rosso 1 and runway 19. The wind is calm.
All right, Rosso, the Rosso 1 to 19. Thank you, American 965.
Report Tuluá at 21 miles and 5,000 feet.
Okay, report Tuluá.
The controller is still asking them to report passing the Tuluá beacon. Without radar, he doesn't realize that they're already past it and are speeding down the valley towards the airport. Captain Tafuri now makes another fateful decision. Having decided that they're going to head for the Roseau waypoint instead, he punches R into his computer. The computer database responds by offering a list of more than 10 waypoints to choose from, all beginning with R. Normally, the nearest one, Roseau, would be at the top of the list, but tonight it's not. Captain Tafuri doesn't notice and pushes the execute button. At over 300 miles per hour and descending at a rate of approximately 1,300 feet per minute, Flight 965 begins to veer off on a new and deadly course.
I never imagined that they were deflecting the route in addition to losing altitude. Because I didn't have radar.
In the cockpit of Flight 965, the pilots are completely unaware of what they've done. They're busy studying charts as their plane crosses the mountains into unknown territory. For more than a minute, American Airlines Flight 965 has been turning off its proper course and into the mountains. Captain Tafuri and First Officer Williams suddenly notice that their aircraft is taking them somewhere that they don't want to go.
We're going out to...
Let's go right to Tallulah, first of all, okay?
Yeah, where are we headed?
17.7.
Captain Tafuri is floundering in the pitch darkness. If he could only find the Tallulah waypoint, he could get his bearings. He switches from one computer system to another and then manually enters the radio frequency for the Tallulah beacon.
Okay, I'm getting it. 17.7 just doesn't seem right on mine. I don't know why.
Left turn. So you want a left turn back around to ULQ?
Nah, hell no. Let's press on to...
Press on to where, though?
Tallulah.
Hopelessly lost, and less than 2 minutes from impact, Tafuri decides to press on with his doomed approach.
Let's go to Cali, first of all, okay? We fucked up here, didn't we?
Yeah.
Go direct CLO. How did we get fucked up here? Come to the right now. Come to the right now.
The pilots don't know it, but when the plane veered off course, it crossed over the mountains. They're now in another valley, parallel with the one they should be flying down. Passengers are completely unaware that in less than 60 seconds, the aircraft traveling more than 210 miles an hour is going to crash.
We're almost there.
It's that fucking Tallulah I'm not getting for some reason. See, I can't... Okay, no. Tallulah's fucked up.
Okay, yeah.
But I can put it in the box if you want.
I don't want Tallulah. Let's just go to the extended center line of...
Which is Roseau.
Roseau.
Well, why don't you just go direct to Roseau then, all right?
Okay, let's...
I'm gonna put that over to you.
They decide to give up on Tallulah and make straight for the airport. They don't realize that there's now a wall of mountains between them and Cali.
965 altitude.
965.
9,000 feet.
Roger.
Distance now.
Shit!
The plane's ground proximity warning system is telling them they're about to crash.
965, this is Cali approach. Can you hear me?
Y ya no me contestó.
He didn't answer.
No me volvió a contestar.
He never answered again.
Easy does it! Easy does it!
I could feel that we were just violently just going up. And I felt like I was in a roller coaster ride or something. And the turbulence was absolutely horrible. And by that time, people were screaming, and everybody knew on the flight that something was very wrong.
Too low. Terrain.
Easy does it! Easy does it! Up, baby!
Instinctively, I reached over and I grabbed my father's hand, and I put my head in my lap. In my mind, I just kept on thinking, come on, just straighten it out, straighten it out.
Up, baby! More! Up, up, up!
These were the last words on the cockpit voice recorder.
American 965, this is Cali approach. Can you hear me?
At 9:42 p.m. on its final approach to runway 19,
American 965, can you hear me?
American Airlines Flight 965 seemingly vanishes without a trace.
American 965, this is Cali approach. Can you hear me?
I never experienced anything like this before. This was the first time that I lost a plane and the crew was not responding. It is very difficult to grasp the moment. When the plane didn't answer, I looked outside from the control tower. I could see from there the sky. I started to look for the plane. The night was clear, and I thought I could see the plane coming. But in this case, I never saw the plane.
Moments after the plane's scheduled arrival, airport monitors indicate a 7-minute delay. Friends and family wait with anticipation for the arrival of their loved ones. As the revised arrival time comes and goes, rumors begin to circulate throughout the terminal that air traffic control has lost contact with Flight 965. In an instant, joy turns to shock as cries that the plane has crashed spread throughout the terminal. Locals living near the town of Buga, north of Cali, report hearing a massive explosion. Rescue teams race to the town, which lies near the base of a local mountain range that stretches as high as 10,000 feet. It's now 3 a.m., almost 6 hours after the crash. The first elements of the search and rescue team are trekking up the side of El Deluvio mountain. There are no roads. It's completely cut off. In the midst of tons of twisted and torn metal lies 21-year-old Mercedes Ramirez. Her last memory prior to impact is grabbing her father's hand and the deafening sound from the back of the plane of the tail section striking trees.
The next memory I have is the next day. It's daylight. I wake up and I see the sunlight around me, and I don't know where I am. And what's around me looks like a landfill, like a trash dump. And so as I'm laying there, I'm thinking, where in the world am I?
Mercedes is critically injured with severe internal injuries and a shattered leg.
Help! Is anybody out there? Help me!
19-year-old college student Mauricio Reyes also survives the impact and responds to Mercedes' cry for help.
Can you move?
I can try. I'm not sure. My leg is bent backwards.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay.
Help me, please.
Okay.
The only way for me to get out was having to drag myself over people. And I remember this lady who I had to drag myself over, and I'll never forget her. Looking back, I think, oh my goodness, that was someone's mom, or that was someone's sister, or someone's wife. But at that time, she was just an object that I needed to get over to get out.
Can you move? Can you stand up?
I think my leg is broken.
Okay, we'll try.
Okay. Okay.
1,
Okay.
2, 3.
And when he lifted me was when the first time I actually felt pain. It just felt like an electrical current going up and down my leg. So he laid me back down, and then he went off to try to find help.
Okay? Okay. Just stay here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Help! Is anybody out there?
While I was laying there, more of the thoughts that were coming into my mind was, why me? Why did this happen to me?
At first light, the Colombian Air Force starts searching for the crash site. They were unable to leave earlier because they had no night vision equipment. On the ground, rescue teams which had been climbing throughout the night are approaching the summit of El Diluvio.
When I wake up, I start to feel the pain in my back. Then when I hear the sound of the helicopters, I realize something happened. I start to feel panic.
Help me! Someone please help me!
Daddy, I'm here. Papa.
Michelle?
Gonzalo Dusan's 6-year-old daughter Michelle, still strapped in her seat, answers her father's desperate call for help.
Keep talking to me, okay? Michelle?
So I realized that my daughter was alive too. Then I start to crawl to try to look for where the voice of my daughter coming from.
Michelle, please, I'm coming. Where are you?
Dusan struggles to crawl through the broken and twisted cabin to reach his daughter, but she's pinned beneath the wreckage.
Ow! Ow! My leg hurts. When the plane crashed, my legs, I had my seatbelt on, and I guess the crash was so deep that my legs, like, speared into the ground. I tried to move myself, but my legs hurt. They hurt really bad. I couldn't pick myself up. Daddy, it hurts.
Okay, Michelle. I'm going to get some water for you soon and bring it back, okay?
Then I try to crawl more to try to get out.
Despite a severe back injury, Dusan manages to crawl towards a small open section of the fuselage.
I saw a hole behind me, and I said inside me, God, help me to get out from here.
Help us! Over here! Help us!
When I get up of the fuselage of the plane, I remember my son talked to me.
Gonzalito!
And he say, Father, help me.
Gonzalito!
Despite a desperate search, Gonzalo Dusan is unable to locate his son amongst the wreckage.
Gonzalito!
Realizing there's no way to get off the mountain by foot, the survivors of Flight 965 are still unsure if they will ever make it. The temperatures have fallen dramatically, and without protective clothing, they could die of exposure in a matter of hours.
Stay awake for Papa, okay? Okay, Michelle?
Since first light, the Colombian Air Force has been searching for the crash site without success. With each passing minute, the 4 survivors, all gravely injured, take one step closer to death.
Michelle!
Shortly after daybreak, the crew of a Black Hawk chopper spots the crash site.
I could see the helicopters perfectly from where I was at, and even though I could see them perfectly, I didn't know if they could see me.
When I saw the helicopter very close to the trees, to the top of the trees, I started moving the blanket. I started moving the blanket, then so I said, oh, they saw me, they're coming for us.
More than 8 hours after impact, and after enduring life-threatening injuries and near-freezing temperatures, the survivors of Flight 965 are about to be rescued.
People finally know that we're here, and they're finally here to rescue us after so many hours of being stuck on that side of that mountain. So seeing them was one of the greatest things ever.
They came and they throw a rock, and the people start to descend. And I was so happy because I feel that they're gonna help us. The first thing I told them, my son is alive. My son is alive, but I don't know where he is. Help me to find him, please help me to find him. And my daughter is alive, I told them. She's inside the fuselage.
As the rescue team divided up, one went into the fuselage to free Michelle. Another scoured the site for Gonzalo Dusan Jr. Gonzalo is found hanging in the branch of a nearby tree. He's been suspended in the air above the crash site for more than 8 hours. His condition is grave. Mauricio Reyes is the first to be airlifted off the mountain. But low cloud cover grounds the chopper and delays the removal of the remaining survivors. Fearing that Michelle Dusan may not survive the weight, volunteers decided to take a calculated risk. They fashioned a makeshift stretcher out of a piece of the wreckage and began to evacuate Michelle off the mountain by foot. Shortly after Michelle Dusan left the crash site, the weather clears and the remaining survivors are airlifted to a base camp halfway down the mountain and then to hospital for emergency medical treatment. More than 13 hours after the crash of Flight 965, Michelle Dusan is the last survivor to emerge from the jungle of El Diluvio alive. Surgeons attempt to save the life of her brother, Gonzalo Jr., but he dies on the operating table from massive internal injuries.
I don't think that there is any medical explanation or scientific explanation. There is no explanation. That out of 159 people that were strong and like tough, that me, a little girl, a 6-year-old girl, could survive out of so many people that were so much stronger than me. I just thank God so much.
Of the 163 passengers and crew on board Flight 965, only 4 survived the crash. Experts will later label the accident a non-survivable event. All of the survivors were seated within 2 rows of one another, just above the wing. Huge girders carrying the wings make this the strongest part of the plane. Despite this, Mercedes Ramirez lost both her parents on her 21st birthday.
December 20th, 1995, my life changed forever and has never been the same ever since. There was 160 people on that flight who, the moment that plane hit that mountain, all their hopes and dreams were instantly lost. But for some reason, I've been given a second chance at life, and so I'm going to try to make the best of it.
The successful evacuation of the survivors led to the gruesome task of recovering the bodies of the 159 souls who perished on the slopes of Mount Diluvio. Investigators now descend on the crash site to try to find out how one of the most sophisticated airliners, equipped with state-of-the-art technology, could veer off course and crash more than 35 miles from the airport. The investigation was led by Aeronautica Civil, Colombia's equivalent of the FAA. Assisting the Colombians were investigators from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, including Dave Ivey.
The wreckage and debris report indicated that the airplane actually impacted the eastern side of the mountain as it was trying to proceed back west to get into the valley. And the main body of the wreckage cleared the mountain top, or the ridge, I should say, and landed over on the western side, which is inside the valley area.
Also following the investigation was Dave Simon, an airline captain who knew the Cali approach well.
In the days that followed the crash, the industry was shocked. They were shocked because they didn't know how could a sophisticated airplane like the 757, flown by a well-respected international carrier like American Airlines with well-trained crews, get so far off course. Nobody could figure out how did it happen, why did it happen.
Sabotage and mechanical malfunction were soon ruled out. Attention began to focus on the action of the flight crew. The discovery of the black boxes enabled the investigators to follow the final moments of American Airlines Flight 965.
There is never one single item or error that typically brings an airplane down. There's an error chain, and a chain is made up of many links. The airplane was en route to Cali. As they were approaching from a distance out, the controller offered them a straight-in landing.
Are you able to approach runway 19er?
Would you like to shoot the 19 straight in?
Yeah, we'll have to scramble to get down. We can do it.
When they first accepted the approach, the first officer remarked that we do need to get down in a hurry in order to accomplish this.
Yes, sir. We'll need a lower altitude right away, though.
At the time the crew accepted the approach to runway 19, they were too high, too fast, and too close in to safely make this approach.
To lose altitude, the first officer deploys the speed brakes. This action will come back to haunt the flight crew in the final segment of the flight.
The fact that they accepted that runway put the crew in a rushed and hurried manner.
Maybe at Tallulah, first of all. You want to go right to Cal or to Tallulah?
I thought he said the Rosso 1 arrival.
Yeah, he did. We got time to pull that out?
The flight crew now needs to study the approach charts and reprogram the computer. Meanwhile, the airplane is moving at more than 5 miles per minute.
And when you start to rush and you can't prepare in an adequate amount of time, then additional errors start to occur.
Because they're rushed and in a hurry and scrambling, they then make a dangerous request.
Can American Airlines 965 go direct to Rosso?
And then do the Rosso arrival, sir.
Affirmative. Take the Rosso 1 and runway 19er.
When the controller said affirmative, take the Rosso 1, he meant use the Rosso 1 arrival procedure, although the crew thought he meant to go direct to Rosso.
That's not a good idea because to proceed direct to Rosso is the last point just before the runway. And Rosso is the last point before landing, not the first point that you should be targeting. And this miscommunication really dealt with the pilot believing one thing and the air traffic controller believing another. That was another link, in my view, that was part of the error chain.
Where are we?
The crew looks at their charts in front of them, and they see the fix Rosso, and it is identified by the letter R. So they naturally put R into the computer, thinking it will take them directly to Rosso.
The computer offers a list of R's to choose from, but unbeknownst to the pilots, none of them is Rosso.
Habit has shown, and the system is designed to place the one that is closest to your airplane first. And so here was an R that showed up first, and he selected that.
A map display in front of the pilot shows the proposed course to the waypoint he selected. It will take the plane left into the mountains.
According to American Airlines procedure, prior to executing an input such as this to select the R, you confirm with the other pilot, does this look correct to you?
965, 9,000 feet.
This clearly was not done. If it had been, they would have seen a dotted line showing a provisional path from the nose of the airplane, turning and going back to about their 7 o'clock position.
Captain Tafuri hastily presses the execute button.
In aviation, we call that fast-fingered Freddy. When you don't confirm anything, you're in a big hurry to punch something in the computer and you don't confirm where it's really going to take you.
Yeah, it's a left turn.
Yeah, I gotta identify that fucker, though.
Unfortunately, the crew does not know that R stands for another fix that is 132 miles away behind them at about their 7 o'clock position, and that's where the airplane starts to go to.
The flight crew of American Airlines 965 has unwittingly directed their aircraft off its intended course and into mortal danger.
Where are we?
The plane was simply doing what it was programmed to do. In this case, it's to fly to Bogota, 130 miles away.
More than a minute into the turn, the pilots are unaware that the plane is flying away from Cali and is heading dangerously off course.
The first officer's getting the charts out, the captain's getting the charts out, they're trying to tune radios. No one's flying the airplane, no one's watching what happens, and they assume that the automation is going to take care of them. Sometimes it will, but in this case it didn't.
Where are we? We're going out to...
Let's go right to Tallulah, first of all, okay?
Yeah, where are we headed?
17.7 ULQ. What's with the ULQ? What happened here?
There's an old saying in aviation, never point an airplane someplace that your brain hasn't been 5 minutes earlier.
The American 965, distance now?
What did you want, sir?
Distance DME?
In this case, the airplane got in front of them. It was flying what was selected. And in fact, it was flying beyond the pilot's recognition of where it was supposed to be traveling.
The pilots had lost what's referred to as situational awareness.
Left turn, so you want a left turn back around
Nah,
the
hell
U-off
no,
view.
let's press
Well,
on to...
we're pressing to where, though?
Tallulah.
That's a right U.
Once they became unsure of their position, once they became confused and disoriented, that's the time to click off the automation and to basically abandon the approach, climb to the minimum safe altitude, and to go to Cali.
Right. Let's go to straight to Cali.
965 altitude.
Instead of abandoning the approach and gaining altitude, Flight 965 continued its deadly descent. When the warning sounded that the plane was about to crash into the ground, First Officer Williams disengaged the autopilot within 1 second, but forgot to retract the speed brakes which had been deployed earlier.
965, this is Cali approach. Can you hear me?
According to the official report, had they remembered to lower the speed brakes, the plane could have cleared the mountain with room to spare.
This accident is known as a CFIT accident, which means controlled flight into terrain. By that I mean the airplane was controlled by the crew, and it was a perfectly normal functioning airplane, and the crew flew the airplane into the mountain. It's one of the leading causes of accidents over the last 100 years, and still is a problem.
Both these pilots were experienced pilots flying the 757 for American Airlines. And both these pilots were good pilots. And I think it's like anything else. Two good pilots were led astray by a problem that they were trying to figure out. And at the time, they failed to do the basic thing, fly the airplane.
A court eventually ruled that the pilots of Flight 965 had shown willful misconduct during the approach to Cali Airport. Survivor Mercedes Ramirez, who lost both her parents, continues to deal with the crash.
I think this was a classic textbook case of everything you should not do when flying a plane. Hopefully it's a wake-up call to pilots that no matter how many times you've flown to a city, you just have to be alert and aware, because every little move that you make, you have the lives of people in your hands.
Avianca Flight 52 is in trouble. The crew is exhausted. They're over New York City and almost out of fuel.
Are we cleared to land now?
Yes, sir, we are clear to land.
Tell me things louder because I'm not hearing it.
They're cleared to land. Soon the nightmare will be over.
Gear down.
Glide slow! Isn't grade 500 feet?
The captain desperately searches for the runway at Kennedy Airport.
Lights!
But he can't find it.
The runway, where is it?
I don't see it. I don't see it.
Now they're battling violent wind shear.
This is the wind shear.
They're going to crash.
Hurry the landing gear up, landing gear up!
The plane has hardly a drop of fuel left. They cannot land. Flight 52 is about to crash somewhere over New York. How could that happen? Even the world's finest air crash detectives will never agree about who is to blame.
Relevance of testimony. Southwest of Kennedy Airport, with a track brought up.
January the 25th, 1990. Air traffic controllers have been nervously tracking a massive low-pressure system approaching the northeast coast of America.
There was a system moving through the Great Lakes, moving east. There was a couple other systems converging. And a lot of times they'll converge in the New York area there, and the whole northeast will go down.
The weather is already near the safe minimum to land a plane. Flights will have to be cancelled or delayed. The terminals will be choked with thousands of angry passengers. Despite the terrible weather, the air traffic managers in Washington, D.C. order controllers at Kennedy Airport in New York to set a high landing rate. Air travel is vital, and they're under tremendous pressure to delay or cancel as few flights as possible.
There's pressure because that's the business they're in. The business is moving passengers from A to B. That's what the airlines are paid, and the controllers are paid to help that work.
Management in Washington, D.C. is pressuring New York to take on more flights than they feel is safe. Despite the weather, they want them to land 33 aircraft per hour.
We don't like it. We're going to have the worst possible conditions for landing aircraft at Kennedy Airport. We can't use runway 13.
We have to use runway 22 because of the conflicts with other airports.
And because of the winds, we don't like the rate of 33 an hour.
33 is it, and you'll take it.
Scores of overseas flights with thousands of passengers are already on their way. They have to land somehow.
What are we going to do with foreign traffic?
We'll just give them airborne holes.
Well, we know we're going to have wind shear and missed approaches, and this is going to be a very bad day.
I've got very bad vibes about this day.
No. 33. You'll shake it.
And that set the scenario at about 7 or 8 in the morning before we left Medellin. At 7 or 8 in the morning, the scenario was set for this accident to happen.
But within the next few hours, fog and low clouds have closed the main runway at JFK. Now, whatever their bosses say, the controllers won't be able to land 33 aircraft an hour. "2,400 miles to the south in Colombia, it's a warm, sunny day with not a cloud in the sky. Avianca Flight 52 is now boarding passengers for New York. Among them, Miriam and Luis Montoya and their 2 young daughters.
I remember during that day in the morning, before we boarded the flight, I talked to a friend that was going to pick us up at the airport in New York. He told us the weather conditions were bad. The temperature was very low, and it was rainy, and it was going to be foggy.
After a short business trip, Nestor Zarata is traveling home to New York.
I received a telephone call telling me that if I could be in the airport in half an hour and not ask any questions or request anything, I would get on the direct flight to New York.
In the cockpit, flight engineer Matthias Moyano monitors the loading of over 13,000 pounds of fuel, making a total of 80,000 pounds. Enough for the journey, plus an extra 2 hours flying time.
Bianca 052 Heavy, request clearance for takeoff, runway 11.
Just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Avianca 52 takes off from Medellin with its maximum allowable fuel load. The Colombian airliner heads north for the United States with 158 passengers and crew. By early evening, deteriorating weather has made flight operations at JFK appalling.
Continue to the left, heading 230 vectors and holding for Cameron again.
With no way of turning back the overseas flights, aircraft are forced to circle round endlessly, waiting to land.
Turn left. There is a wind shear alert on final at 1,500 feet. Turn left.
Controllers work frantically to keep track of the growing number of aircraft now in the skies over New York.
251, you are clear to land.
When Mother Nature gets involved, problems develop. The tension gets higher, the pressure gets higher, decisions become more critical.
At JFK, any idea how long those delays are going to be?
I talked to someone else over there, no idea.
I'm holding over here. Delays indefinite due to the weather. The traffic's missing the approaches. They're going around. I just can't give you a good answer. Your guess would be as good as mine. That's the best I can tell you.
JFK Airport in New York now only has one runway for landing, and aircraft are queuing up to use it. In the near blackout conditions, several planes have to abort their landings, which only adds to the delays. On Flight 52, they know none of this. The crew neither receives nor requests the weather for New York or for their alternate airport, Boston.
In this case, Avianca 52 had the capability of calling several different stations or could have called their own dispatch operation in Miami and got an update on the weather. We don't really have any evidence that they checked with anyone to get the updated weather for JFK and their alternate Boston.
It's inconceivable to me that someone with a responsibility of other people's lives would fly into a deteriorating condition without checking about, hey, do we have a way out of this place?
Avianca 52 enters the airspace near Norfolk, Virginia. After 4 hours in the air, New York City is now less than 40 minutes away. 51-year-old Captain Laureano Caviedes is a seasoned pilot who's been flying with Avianca for 27 years. But his English is poor. All communications with air traffic control will be handled by the 28-year-old co-pilot, Mauricio Klotz. The third man in the cockpit, flight engineer Matthias Moyano, is experienced, but like co-pilot Klotz, he has only 4 months of flight time in the 707.
They were a highly experienced flight crew who had been into New York several times previously on behalf of Avianca. So they were familiar with the route and the procedures, and highly experienced pilots.
Washington, good evening. Avianca 052 Heavy, flight level 370.
Avianca 052 Heavy, Washington Center, roger. Avianca 052, I'd like you to make a right 360-degree turn. And I need you to get a pencil ready for holding instructions at Norfolk.
Okay, 360-degree right turn at Norfolk, Avianca 052 Heavy.
Avianca 052, you ready to copy your holding instructions?
Go ahead, sir.
All right, Avianca 052, you are clear to the Norfolk VORTAC. Hold south on 174 with right turns and 20-mile legs.
Flight 52's troubles are about to begin. They're being diverted out over the Atlantic Ocean near Norfolk, Virginia, and placed in a holding pattern. Here, the aircraft will fly an elliptical racetrack pattern while it waits for further instructions from air traffic control. They don't know about the bad weather ahead, but with enough fuel for more than 2 hours of flying, there's no cause for alarm. This area in the northeast corridor of the United States is one of the most congested airspaces in the world. Incoming traffic from overseas is routinely directed through a pipeline of controllers before being cleared to land at one of 3 major airports in the New York area: JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark. Tonight, Avianca 52 will come under the direction of more than 6 controllers, each of whom is trying to get the aircraft now circling over New York safely down on the ground.
We just got off the line. It's indefinite holding at this time.
080.
We just had 3 missed approaches on 22 right. We just went below the minimums. We just had 4 misses on 22 right, which is our primary runway. The visibility is getting worse, and it's worsening.
All right, how many are you holding?
Well, we're still holding the 12 or 13 we had earlier. We're expecting some pretty lengthy delays in another hour or so.
While air traffic controllers try to cope with the increasing backlog of flights, Avianca Flight 52 circles for 19 minutes over the Virginia coast, waiting for permission to continue its journey to New York.
Avianca 052, expedite descent through level 33. Just leave flight level 330 within 3 minutes, please.
Okay, we'll leave 330 within 3 minutes. Avianca 052 Heavy.
The Avianca jet is on its way to New York at last, but they have no idea of the trouble that awaits them. Avianca Flight 52 is on its final approach to New York, unaware that conditions for landing at JFK are barely above the safe limits to land a plane. It's a pitch-black night with heavy mist, rain, and sudden violent winds.
This is Central. I was wondering how your weather was doing up there.
It's pretty bad at this point. We got all sorts of wind shears and missed approaches due to not seeing a runway.
You're still trying on a 30 rate.
Yeah, rather unsuccessfully at this point. The winds are starting to pick up. 20% of the guys' attempted approaches went on to miss.
When the northeast goes down, it goes down. It goes down for a big area. And a lot of quick decisions have to be made. You just can't say, wait a minute, stop. Everyone's en route.
The plane has now almost used up the fuel planned for the journey and will shortly start eating into its reserves. The crew is considering diverting to their alternate airport in Boston, just 210 miles from New York.
Washington Center, Avianca 052 Heavy.
Avianca 052 Heavy, go ahead.
Do you have any information about delays to Boston?
Boston, I'll check that, sir.
Thank you.
The Washington controller asks his assistant to check on the conditions at Boston, but he gets distracted juggling other aircraft and forgets all about Avianca's request. While Flight 52 is left waiting for an answer that never comes, their precious fuel supply is slowly draining away.
Ask him about Boston again.
Did you ask about delays at Boston, or are we going to approach Kennedy?
Okay, Avianca 052, it looks as though New York Center may have to hold you for possibly up to 30 minutes. You can expect clearance on course just momentarily with, stands right now, an additional holding of at most 30 minutes. With that in mind, you want to check on an alternate airport? I believe Boston is. I'll check on Boston.
Okay. We're now descending to 190 and expecting information about Boston.
Okay, Avianca 052, I've been advised Boston is open and accepting traffic if you do need that as an alternate airport.
Okay, stand by a minute.
Flight engineer Moyano begins to calculate how much fuel they'll have after an additional 30 minutes of holding. Even before they can respond, Washington Control directs them to another holding location.
Avianca 052 Heavy, make a right turn now to intercept the Cameron 2 arrival. Cleared on course, maintain flight level 190.
Flight 52 is now off the New Jersey coast in an area known as Cameron, less than 45 miles from Kennedy Airport, but it seems as far away as ever.
During all those holding times, I was praying and trying to see where we're going to land. I mean, when we're going to be on the ground. I don't want to be here anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. I apologize for the delay, but it appears we're going to be holding as we wait our turn to land in New York. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened, and we should have you on the ground shortly. Thank you.
There was a point where the captain announced that there was traffic in the New York City area and that we would be on hold for a while and that he would get back to us.
It will be the last communication the crew has with the passengers. Flight 52's situation now goes from bad to worse.
Avianca 052, descend and maintain 14,000.
It's handed over to the New York controllers, who even on a good day can be intimidating. And today is not a good day. There are up to 39 aircraft trying to land and dozens more on the ground waiting to take off.
Avianca 052, expect for the clearance at 0139.
Avianca 052 Heavy, roger.
Tired and frustrated, the crew of Avianca 52 continues to circle the crowded airspace over New York while they wait for clearance to land. After more than 5 hours in the air, Luis Montoya is anxious to get his wife and 2 young daughters on the ground and back to their home in Queens.
As the flight started to prolong, we started to feel uneasy. My wife was carrying the baby at all times, and we were wondering what could be happening. After all, they weren't giving us any information, and most people began to feel nervous.
New York Center finally gives the crew of Avianca 52 the message they've been waiting for.
Avianca 052 Heavy, Aviar Kennedy is 2,400 feet. Can you accept an approach?
That's an affirmative, sir.
They think they're finally in the clear. Then, calamity. The foul weather and zero visibility forces several aircraft just ahead of them to abandon their landing attempts and make a second attempt. The controllers have bad news for the Colombian airliner.
Avianca 052, continue to the left, heading 230 vectors, holding at Cameron again.
Another hold.
Okay, 230 vectors for holding at Cameron. Kennedy, Avianca 052.
Avianca 052, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You have any estimates, sir?
Avianca 052 Heavy, I might be able to get you in right now. Stand by.
Thank you.
The crew wait silently and hope. But when the reply comes, it's more bad news.
Avianca 052, we just got off the line. It's indefinite holding at this time. The Avianca 052, turn left, heading 090, hold at Cameron, maintain 1000.
They've been held up for 48 minutes on the way here. Now they've been circling around for another 25 minutes, only a few miles from the safety of JFK Airport.
They were progressively moving toward JFK, and they were held in the air for 3 times. This certainly would put some stress on the crew as to the fact they want to go from A to B. They don't want to fly in a racetrack for an hour just holding.
At 8:55, the cockpit voice recorder begins recording the last 40 minutes of Flight 52. The crew at this stage seem resigned, or are perhaps too timid to complain. Moments later, Avianca is given more unwelcome news.
Avianca 052, expect further clearance time 0205. Expect further clearance in 20 minutes.
It's now that the stress level in the cockpit begins to rise.
0205. Well, I think we need priority. We are passing out of fuel.
Avianca 052, roger. How long can you hold and what is your alternate?
Okay, stand by a minute.
The flight engineer quickly calculates the remaining fuel.
Yes, sir, I will be able to hold for 5 minutes. That's all we can do.
Avianca 052, roger. And what's your alternate?
We said Boston.
But it's full of traffic, I think.
Avianca 052, say your alternate again.
It was Boston, but we can't do it now. We'll run out of fuel.
Avianca 052, cleared to land at Kennedy via heading 040, maintain 1000 at speed 180.
The Avianca crew, when they felt it, they were being handed off to an approach controller now and given a heading and a lower altitude. I'm sure in their minds they thought, well, they even commented on the cockpit voice recorder, we're being handled or we're being taken care of.
It's okay if I send 4 more your way?
Casino, I'm back in the hold again. I got 4 in the stack and there's no end in sight. I can't keep you times. I'd be guessing if I did. This guy's killing me. Avianca 052 only has 5 more minutes in the hold. You gonna be able to take him or I'll set him up to his alternate?
What is his speed now?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Holding speed.
Slow him to 180 and I'll take him.
Say again?
Slow him to 180 knots and I'll take him. You guys holding a lot?
Man, we're holding all up and down the coast.
Ah, that's good practice, man.
But in this critical handoff from one controller to the next, there is no specific mention of Avianca's critically low fuel.
Nobody told the next controller that. So the next controller, when Avianca came in on the frequency, the controller just said, right, I've got you, proceed to Kennedy, or I'm going to put you in a hold, and put him in a holding pattern over the last approach fix. The options were gone. Now the aircraft could only get into Kennedy.
Avianca, descend and maintain 7000.
Descending to 7000, Avianca 052 Heavy.
Avianca 052, before you go, there is a wind shear alert
On final at 1500 feet.
Turn left, heading 090.
Left, heading 090, Avianca 052 Heavy.
The high-level wind shear was passed on early on, so he was aware of that. But the low-level wind shear below 500 feet was not passed on.
During the entire flight from Colombia, the plane's autopilot has been unusable. It was reported after the last flight, but Avianca's maintenance men failed to fix it. After more than 6 hours of flying manually, the physical and mental stress is beginning to take its toll on Captain Caviedes.
To me, it's inconceivable someone would have to fly at Boeing 707 without an autopilot. I mean, that's a high workload in smooth air.
After more than an hour and 17 minutes waiting for clearance to land, the crew of Flight 52 believe controllers on the ground are at last aware of their fuel emergency and are clearing the 707 for a priority landing. In the cabin, the flight attendants and passengers have no idea that their plane is dangerously low on fuel.
Then the go-around procedure is stating that the power be applied slowly.
In the cockpit, the crew now hastily discuss the go-around procedure, what the manual says they must do if they can't find the runway through the fog and low clouds and have to go around a second time. It's standard procedure.
Power be applied slowly and to avoid rapid accelerations and to have a minimum of nose-up attitude.
To maintain what?
Minimum nose-up attitude. That means...
Flight engineer Moyano is concerned that if the captain were to pull up the plane's nose too sharply, all the remaining fuel would slosh to the back of the tank, causing engines to stop.
Covered on fuel during the go-around. What it means is it doesn't contain fuel for feeding itself and a flameout could occur. And it is necessary to lower the nose again.
Right now we are proceeding to the airport inbound. We have 17 miles.
Roger.
This means we'll have hamburger tonight.
Avianca, descend and maintain 3,000.
Descend and maintain 3,000. Avianca 052 Heavy.
3,000 feet. They got us. They're already vectoring us.
No, they are descending us.
And they are giving us priority.
Avianca 052 Heavy. Contact Kennedy Tower 119.1. Good day.
Only minutes before landing, Flight 52 is handed off to a JFK tower controller whose shift is about to end.
Avianca 052 Heavy, Kennedy Tower 22 left. You are number 3 following 727 traffic on a 9-mile final.
Avianca 052
Heavy, roger.
Can I lower the landing gear yet?
No, I think it's too early. If we lower the landing gear, we have to maintain a very high nose attitude.
So desperately low is their fuel that the first officer wants to delay putting down the landing gear, which will increase the aircraft's drag, requiring more power and using more of what little fuel they have remaining.
I was so happy. For me, it was like a joy. I mean, we're going to land soon and this is going to be end.
Avianca 052, what is your airspeed?
Avianca 052, 140 knots.
Avianca 052, can you increase your airspeed 10 knots?
10?
Okay, 10 knots, increasing.
Increase.
10 knots more.
Tell me things louder because I'm not hearing it. Lower the gear.
Gear down.
Avianca 052, 22 left, wind 190 at 20, cleared to land.
Clear to land, Avianca 052 Heavy. Wind check, please.
190 at 20.
With the weather deteriorating and flying on fumes, the crew of Flight 52 will have only one chance of getting their 149 passengers safely on the ground.
Avianca 052, say airspeed.
145 knots.
Are we cleared to land now?
Yes, sir, we are clear to land.
Stand by. Flaps 50. Landing checklist complete.
It was extremely important that Avianca 52 landed on their first approach JFK. The voice recorder revealed that the captain was certainly quite concerned about the fuel state, and he was talking aggressively with the first officer, putting out flaps, getting the airplane configured.
The flight engineer had to know they were out of fuel. And when they came in for the first approach, it was time for the flight engineer to say, this is the only approach we're going to be able to make. And he didn't.
Give me 50.
Flaps 50 now.
All set for landing.
Standing by for lights. Slightly below glide slope. 1,000 feet above field. Instruments cross-checked, slightly below.
Stand by for lights.
Stand by.
The wind is slightly from the left, 190 to 20. Below glide slope.
With about 10 minutes of fuel remaining and just 2 miles from the runway, Flight 52 finds itself flying into violent wind shear, forcing them to slow the plane down.
They were getting like 60 knots of wind on the nose. And then as they descended on down through about 500 feet to the ground, they were down to 20 knots. So that's 40 knot change and 1,000 feet of elevation. That's a lot.
This is the wind shear.
Now the wind changes direction. It's pressing them down towards the ground.
Glide slope.
Glide slope.
Sink rate 500 feet.
Glide slope.
The captain desperately searches for the runway, but it's shrouded in low clouds and fog.
Terrain.
Lights.
The runway, where is it?
I don't
see it. I don't see it.
The plane's warning system is telling them that they're about to crash.
Glide slope! Seemed great. 500 feet.
Just 2 miles from touchdown, Flight 52 has been caught in violent wind shear. To save the plane, Captain Caviedes applies full throttle, burning up more of the plane's precious fuel.
Give me the landing gear up, landing gear up!
The airplane was about 200 feet above the ground, about 2 miles from the runway, which was well below the glide slope and very dangerous. So the airplane almost crashed on its first approach.
When you get a missed approach, now it changes the whole ball game.
Request another traffic pattern.
Executing a missed approach. Avianca 052 heavy.
The operation of pulling the plane up in the missed approach was a very violent one. It was a very steep climb. So we were all thrown back by gravity towards the back of our seats.
Something's going on here. Anything, we're going to crash. This is terrible. I mean, we start praying, but then I pass out. I couldn't handle it anymore.
As Captain Caviedes pulls back hard on the yoke to climb to safety, the 707's remaining fuel is forced to the back of the tank and away from the fuel pumps.
You cannot accelerate the aircraft forward rapidly, and you shouldn't pitch it rapidly.
Smooth with the nose. Smooth with the nose.
You have less than 7,000 pounds, you have to be very careful, or you can slosh that fuel to the back of the tank and unport the inlet to the engines.
Flight 52's violent climb to safety has both frightened and infuriated the passengers.
My baby Daniela also started to feel uneasy and began to cry. We began to get the feeling that something was about to happen.
I buckled up with the baby just in case there was a problem. She's very little, and I was concerned that my weight could have crushed her. I had her in my arms, and we began to say the Lord's Prayer.
I don't know what happened with the runway. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. I didn't see it.
Avianca 052, you were making a left turn, correct, sir?
Tell him we are in emergency.
2,000 feet. That's right, to 180 on
The heading, and we'll try once again. We are running out of fuel.
Okay.
What did he say?
I already advised him that we are going to attempt again.
Advise him we are in an emergency. Do you tell him?
Yes, sir, I already advised him.
But the tower controller, at the end of his shift, transfers Avianca 52 to his counterpart in approach control. They'll have to begin all over again.
Contact approach on 118.4.
Approach, Avianca 052 heavy. We just missed a missed approach, and we are maintaining 2,000. Flaps 14.
Avianca 052 Heavy, New York.
Good evening. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Advise him we don't have fuel.
Climb and maintain 3,000. We are running out of fuel, sir.
Okay, fly heading 080.
Did you already advise him we don't have fuel?
Yes, sir, I already advised him. We are going to maintain 3,000, and he's going to get us back.
As they get back in the pattern and circle the field and come back in again. That again adds to the traffic jam that was being created at Kennedy Airport.
Avianca 052 Heavy,
I'm going to turn you about 15 miles northeast and then bring you back onto the approach.
Is that okay with you and your fuel?
What did he say?
The guy is angry. I guess so. Thank you very much.
These guys were out, and they didn't say we were out. And he allowed the approach control to vector him way out in the original pattern and 15 miles north of the outer marker again.
Flight 52 was instructed to fly a long approach pattern for another landing attempt. The plane is down to its last dregs of fuel as the crew waits for final clearance from ground controllers.
In their minds that they were being handled and taken care of, and they had enough fuel to go around and shoot the approach. But on the way, they were given a 360 turn because of traffic spacing. And then they were run way out towards Long Island and vectored all around, which was equivalent to holding for another 15, 20 minutes.
Did you get clearance yet?
Can you give us a final yet? Avianca 052 Heavy.
Avianca 052.
Affirmative, sir. Turn left, heading 040. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel.
Okay, turn left, heading 310, sir.
Set flaps 14.
Okay, and you're number 2 for the
Approach. I just have to give you enough room so you can make it without
having to come out again.
Okay. We're number 2 and flying 360 now.
Avianca 052 Heavy, turn left, heading 330.
The lights in the aircraft start to flicker, a sign that the engines are being starved of fuel.
330 on the heading, Avianca 052.
Once there's no fuel flowing through the pump out of the tank, an amber light comes on to tell you that tank is empty.
Flame out! Flame out on engine number 4!
Flame out on it!
Flame out on engine number 3!
From the runway. The passengers can hear the sound of the engines beginning to shut down.
When the engines went off, I looked over to the lady that was sitting next to me, and I asked her to give me her hand. And I philosophically accepted, I might die here. This is it.
Avianca 052, we just lost 2 engines, and we need priority, please.
Avianca 052.
Turn left, heading 250. Intercept the localizer.
250, roger.
Select the ILS.
ILS.
Avianca 052, you're 15
miles from the outer marker. Maintain 2,000 until established in the localizer. Cleared for ILS 22 left.
Roger, Avianca.
You select the ILS.
It's ready on 2.
When all the engines flame out and the generators fall off the line, a considerable amount of power is lost, electrical power is lost.
In the cabin, the screams, the crying, and then this terrible sound of the wind against the fuselage as the plane drops from the sky.
Avianca 052, radar contact lost.
Avianca's missing due to the weather thing.
Yeah, Avianca 52 lost an engine. We're
Trying to find out why.
Yeah, we're no longer talking to Avianca. He's 15 northeast of Kennedy.
Ah, wonderful.
Clipper 18, turn left, heading 180.
6.5 hours after leaving Colombia, Avianca Flight 52 is missing somewhere over New York.
Yes, hello. I live in Cove Neck in Oyster Bay, and there is a plane crashed in our yard in front of our house.
When I woke up, the first thing that I did, I put my hand over here in my back, and I was bleeding. I said, "Oh my God, we crashed."
Both my legs were broken, and I had, blood all over the place.
El asiento en el que estaba sentada la hija mía, sí recuerdo que
The
estaba
seat where my daughter was sitting was totally destroyed by pieces of steel that happened to have come from the wing.
pedazos de hierro que entraron del ala y lo
I found my baby Daniela amongst the pieces of a torn-up, twisted chair. And I picked her up like this, and she was drenched in blood.
Bañada en sangre.
Avianca Flight 52 has crashed on Long Island, New York, less than 17 miles from JFK Airport. From deep in the woods, medical technician Bob O'Brien can hear the survivors before he can see the shattered 707.
What I first heard was there were just some people who were crying in pain, but it was apparent immediately what had happened when the plane hit the mountain and just stopped dead.
It just fell out of the sky. That's how witnesses describe the crash of Avianca Flight 52. A strangely silent crash.
There's not a big fire here. That will make it easier for investigators to examine if there were any gas or engine problems.
There have been reports of lightning in the area just before the plane went down.
The spokesman for the controllers union says that Kennedy is critically understaffed, a problem that is compounded by bad weather.
Rescuers have not yet given up on finding more victims.
Lo primero que me acuerdo es que yo miro y
First thing I remember is that I looked up and I saw a priest. He was praying for me and I was lying down on the ground. Right above us, I saw 3 or 4 helicopters flying over us.
Tres o cuatro helicópteros volando encima mío.
Managed to get up on top of the fuselage, and there's that door handle that says, in case of emergency, pull here. So I pulled that door handle, and that door handle just went, and the door came open about 4 inches. And then I was able to flip that over, and I could just see piles and piles of people strapped in their seats.
The extreme G-force of the crash has broken off the cockpit and catapulted it through a stand of trees and into the deck of a home some 100 feet from the impact site.
We couldn't get into the cockpit to get to the pilot and the co-pilot. All those chairs, they all just hit that cockpit door and just piled into that fuselage, and just all that added weight and all that inertia now just took over in the front of that and just popped it off, and it rolled to its left side and stopped up against the tree.
Come on, somebody get the back here. I saw some cables, and I saw a big hole in the fuselage over the passengers that were sitting next to me, who were kind of unconscious.
And on top of me was this guy who was bleeding, and big guy, I don't know who he was, but he was on top of me, but I was sitting.
I pulled myself with those cables towards that hole, which was over the wing.
I started screaming, "Hey, help me out, help me, take me out of here." And then somebody, when they realized that I was alive, they removed they took away the guy who was on top of me, and they took me out of the airplane.
At that moment, a fireman was climbing on the wing, and he saw me, and he said, "There's a guy here," and he pulled me out.
– 37 fire and rescue companies from Nassau County are quickly mobilized. The rescue is the largest pre-9/11 operation of its kind in the New York area.
That little girl was sitting up on the fuselage and she was crying, "Mi madre, mi madre." And that imprint of horror just was, you just in your mind's eye focus right back in on, I saw mi madre, I saw her mother. And I know what that little girl was seeing. It was horrible enough for me, and I'm a professional rescuer.
I realized that my baby was dying, so I began to scream.
Please help me. I had the baby here, please.
The plane has crashed in the wealthy neighborhood of Cove Neck, near the home of the father of tennis star John McEnroe. Medics set up a makeshift triage unit on his lawn. When daylight breaks 10 hours later, 85 survivors have been pulled from the wreck. The lead flight attendant is the only member of crew to survive the crash. Of the 11 babies on board Flight 52, all but one are found alive. Among the dead are several passengers with drugs hidden inside their bodies. Known as drug mules, they're poor people paid by the Colombian drugs cartels to smuggle cocaine into the United States.
It became an issue later on. They posted police officers at the morgue because they were afraid that the drug cartel would come in and try to steal the bodies, because they were worth $1 million apiece, and they were waiting for this shipment, and there were a lot of them.
Bob O'Brien scours the tail section for survivors and finds FAA investigators struggling to remove the aircraft's black boxes.
I grabbed the handle and just pulled the whole box out and took that out and brought that out the door and gave it to them.
Even as people are being pulled from the wreckage, the on-site investigation begins. In charge on the ground is Barry Trotter of the National Transportation Safety Board. A former airline pilot, Trotter became an investigator after losing his right arm in a motorcycle accident.
The condition of the aircraft was Really astonishing to see that that much of the structure was left in the condition that it was in. It hit right on about a 28-degree embankment, and with the wings and all the other trees, it only slid 28 feet, so it hit and stopped instantly.
Unaware of the details of Avianca's troubled flight, investigators quickly find a valuable piece of evidence.
You could look at the engines right away and you could tell the engines were not turning. So there was no power on the engines. That was the first big clue.
Trotter and his team examine the fuel tanks and find just a few gallons of jet fuel still on board. It becomes clear why the 707's engines stopped turning, but the question of who's to blame is still to be answered. In the community of Cove Neck, New York, salvage workers begin the task of dismantling the shattered remains of Avianca Flight 52. But there's still one critical question. Who is responsible for Flight 52 running out of fuel and causing the death of 72 passengers and crew? The answer will be worth millions of dollars and affect dozens of lives. At the lab of the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C., investigators are eager to recover data locked inside the two black boxes. The most telling of these is often the flight data recorder, which records critical information, such as the plane's altitude, airspeed, and heading.
When we recovered the flight data recorder and brought it to our lab in Washington, we opened it and found that the foil wrap was not hooked up. So someone had actually intentionally taped the end of the foil so it wouldn't fly around and put it back in the airplane.
Without the crucial flight data recorder, investigators rely heavily on Flight 52's cockpit voice recorder, which is found with more than 40 minutes of voice recordings of the crew and communications between the first officer and air traffic controllers.
Yes, sir. We are clear to land. Stand by. All set for landing. Below glide slope.
And it was apparent from the voice recorder transcript and tape that the captain was not understanding the first officer's radio communications that were being made in English.
Everybody wants to blame the pilot, but he may be the last person to make a decision, and the scenario which caused him to be in that position where he makes the decision was created by several other people along the route.
The captain asked the first officer about 9 times to clarify information or repeat it or to pass on information.
We are going to attempt again.
Advise we are in an emergency. Do you tell him?
Did he make a conscious decision to run out of fuel? No. He was sucked into a situation by the air traffic controllers where he ran out of fuel.
Once the airplane got into the JFK area, there was certainly a serious breakdown in communications on the part of the pilots within the cockpit, on the part of the pilots talking to controllers, and controllers talking to the pilots, and the controllers amongst themselves, because there were handoffs and some of the urgency was not passed on within the controllers system. So we had multiple breakdowns in multiple areas here that ultimately led to this accident.
Slow!
The cockpit voice recorder reveals a crew desperate to land the 707 in near zero visibility and in extreme wind shear without the aid of an autopilot.
In this case, the captain had a difficult time maintaining the glide slope during the approach with the wind shear, didn't see the airport, and had to make a go-around. That almost doomed the airplane at that point.
The information being given to pilots en route was a wind shear up as high as 1,500 feet. But their pilots on approach were encountering wind shear as low as 300 feet. And that wasn't passed on to the Avianca pilot.
This is the wind shear.
The crew of Flight 52 is caught off guard. As they descend below 500 feet and slow down, a violent vertical wind forces them towards the ground, nearly causing the plane to crash 2 miles short of the runway. Ironically, Avianca 52's lack of fuel resulted in no fire or explosion, saving the survivors from almost certain death.
If the flight would have found some level ground, it was conceivable he would have slapped the fuselage down and slid to a stop. With no fuel, there would have been no fire. And I think it's very possible that most of the people would have survived it in that case.
As the hearings into the crash begin, lawyer George Tompkins is confronted by controllers who maintain that the Avianca crew failed to use the word emergency, instead using the word priority to communicate their situation.
The government took the position that the pilot never declared an emergency, so no one knew that he had a problem. But saying you're getting low on fuel and saying you cannot make your alternate, the word emergency is not necessary to say.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel. We just lost 2 engines and we need priority, please.
And they thought they were telling them when they said we need priority.
Para nosotros en español, la palabra prioridad significa.
In Spanish, for us, the word priority means first.
Corre a mí, te estoy necesitando.
Attend to me, run to me. I need you right now.
No sé si es que.
I don't know if priority in other languages means that you can wait.
Que puedes esperar.
To me, priority means a priority. If you ask a child, what is a priority to you, what are you going to say? He doesn't need to say an emergency.
Avianca 052 only has 5 more minutes in the hold. You gonna be able to take him, or I'll set him up to his alternate?
What is his speed now?
I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. Holding speed.
The NTSB concludes that air traffic's handling of Avianca 52 was proper, considering the information they were getting from the flight crew. Many of the passengers are shocked and outraged by what they feel is a gross injustice, but air traffic control is found blameless. Avianca sues the Federal Aviation Administration, which employs the air traffic controllers, saying they should have done more when Flight 52 told them they were running out of fuel. The FAA settles and ends up paying around 40% of the estimated $200 million compensation due to the victims.
If you listen and read the tapes, the transcripts of the tapes of each air route traffic control center along the route, and the final to New York Tracon, New York Tower, Kennedy Tower, you'll find 20 places where this accident could have been avoided if somebody had done something differently.
Among the 85 survivors who escaped the shattered remains of Flight 52 are the Montoya's 2 daughters. Daniela, the baby covered in blood, is now a healthy teenager preparing for college.
The day just before the flight, we took a long trip to visit the Virgin Mary. This is a very important sanctuary in Medellin. Perhaps it was a miracle of God and the Virgin that the 4 of us survived. It was a miracle, and we feel blessed by that.
For many of the survivors, recovering from their injuries has been easier than coming to terms with the reason why Flight 52 ran out of fuel.
I had to learn to walk from scratch. It's difficult enough to deal with the injuries. It makes me very angry to think that a plane went down with 161 souls and had almost half the people lost their lives because of a word.